I love that, Rob. I have found in my own life that what I say, I become, and that what James said with our tongue being that rudder that's going to steer the ship, said if I say it enough times, I'll believe it. I can sit here and look at the sky and say that sky is black or it's red. And I can say it enough times to where eventually my body and my mind will start to follow what I've said. I can look at a certain drink, a certain food, and say over and over again, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. And over
Right.
time, my body, my mind will start to follow that. Welcome to the Leveraging Success Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Gearhart. Every time that we come together, we're after helping you to work less, make more, and with that margin, be an incredible husband, wife, be an incredible parent, and ultimately be an amazing kingdom leader. Your success is something that you've worked at all your life. You've achieved so many things. And with that achievement and high success, there's a certain amount of access and capability, and we can stay in that same hamster wheel, or we can start to take that and leverage it for the purposes of a significant life. What I get to do is often be here with my good friend and co-host with this podcast, Rob Dayton. Rob, thanks for being here today. Anything can happen when we turn these mics on.
Anything could happen, and it's a new year. So happy New Year, Jeff.
Happy New Year. When we were on our break, it was great family time. We were able to spend time doing things like playing games, spending time eating things we don't eat throughout the year. But also, what we got to do was to go to a Broadway show. And as a family, we are fans of Les Mis, and don't know how exactly that happened. It was probably because we've sang the songs, we've watched the movies, but we've all of us wanted to go to the Broadway show at some point. And so the Broadway show had come to Dallas over the break, and we got some time to go out. And by the way, if you've never experienced Les Mis before, it's a story of redemption.
It's
I think that's
amazing.
one of the things, that we love so much about it. Well, we get to take our kids to this Broadway show. And the Broadway show, the whole show is singing. There's very little words spoken. And so you have to understand the narrative through the songs that are sung. And we love all of these songs. We can sing them. And there is one song in particular that the main character, Jean Valjean, sings that's called Who Am I? And he asks the question because he's lived a life as a prisoner, as a freed prisoner who has a lot of success and basically becomes the mayor. And in all of that, he's lived several lifetimes through all of these experiences. But he has the grand question, who am I? And Rob, what we get to do in the master's program and what we coach and consult towards is to be a student of yourself, to look
Come
at
on.
the artwork, the painting of who did God make me to be? Because as we understand that answer, we can get great purpose and live significant lives. And what I thought we would do is unpack the answer is who is Rob Dayton? And if we could get after that to go through that process together and show the work, because Rob, I know this is a subject that you love. It's something that we've both spent a lot of time in to unpack the answers to. Tell me more about that and how you get to do that in your consulting and coaching world.
Well, I really love that you're going to Les Mis. I don't know if you've seen the movie version. So in the movie version where Jean Valjean is getting forgiven by the priest is such an empowering moment and picture of forgiveness that's not just letting you off the hook, but it's also giving you the grace and authority and power to transform. And in my story, I really feel like that's what God did. And it's really interesting, I'm sure you find this in your coaching practice and the people who are listening, is that the way Papa God, the way he brings us grace and takes us to the next level in that forgiveness process he always leverages all the things that we would perhaps say were not valuable, or experiences where we screwed up, or where our sin was really in the way. He always capitalizes on that, and then makes the return on investment from those things that we thought were evil, that he redeemed us from, deposited and empowered in the people we serve. And I love that. And that is kind of how it was for me. Does that sound similar for your life?
It does. Now, so much of that answer to who am I has been spent around my job title, the company I worked for, perhaps my income level, where I lived, who I knew, who I spent time with, those sort of things that aren't exactly superfluous, but aren't truly root or at the base of who am I. And so I need to work through, I want to work through to get to that answer, because absent the answer to who am I, someone else is writing that answer for me, Rob. Someone else is pushing me into it, because everyone would love to frame what they want from me, what they see me as. And so long as I live in that world, then the answer is always what someone else gave.
It's so true. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, we're going on this journey. And for me, I was a Christian at a very young age. I was in Pasadena at Lake Avenue Church, under the kind of the shadow of Fuller Seminary, lots of Christian leaders. My dad was a world evangelist for World Vision. And so there was a lot of pressure to be spiritual. I went I was at church still, like from like 7:30 in the morning, and then briefly away, and then back at church at 6 p.m. Definitely Wednesday night. So like that was the rhythm, and we had a very strong movement to move towards Christ. But in that process, I became very duplicative. In other words, I actually was living two lives by the time I was in high school. Is I was living one life where I was visually, everything I said was church. And then I was addicted to pornography. At that time, it was paper, but just a sexual addiction. And that was a crazy thing. I actually ended up getting married, still had that sexual addiction, but was able to be a leader at church, and at the same time, this person that was in between Sundays living a completely different life. And the salvation story from that is pretty amazing and unique, the way God brought me out of that. But the signature that remains on who I am is that I have this now strong conviction that what we say we will live, and this strong dedication to the words of Jesus and what he says. That is what I need mind transformation on, so that I can live his words, so that I can be singular in who I am and not duplicative.
Man, I love that, Rob. I have found in my own life that what I say, I become, and that what James said, with our tongue being that rudder that's going to steer the ship, said if I say it enough times, I'll believe it. I can sit here and look at the sky and say that sky is black, or it's red. And I can say it enough times to where eventually my body and my mind will start to follow what I've said. I can look at a certain drink, a certain food, and say over and over again, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. And over
Right.
time, my body, my mind will start to follow that and have that reflex. Now, depending on how deep seated that is in my mind, and how I've trained my body, may take time for that to follow through. But certainly, my tongue as a rudder, for instance, is steering me directionally. And so what I say is really important. What I say about myself, what do I really believe about myself? And I have to be careful that what I let come through here through my mouth is truly serving me and those around me. Because if I say something that is not of value or damaging, or it's just a moment of insanity, it can damage my soul and ultimately cost me my ability to be significant. So it's really important to manage what I'm thinking and what I'm saying.
That's really good and profound for people who are listening, because what we're doing constantly is we're reprogramming our brains. And I think that this is I think it's really important to talk about this process. I call it the 100x Jesus process of how we transform, is that our mind, and scientists are really baffled by the fact that our mind is somehow outside of our brains, that we get to think about what we're thinking about. And then we can actually program the matter of the body to automatically do things. And what you're describing is you're saying, I'm going to keep what I say in check, because guess who's listening? My unconscious mind is listening. The unconscious mind is kind of interesting because it doesn't understand what's real and what's not real. So when you, in your imaginations, when you're fantasizing or when you're speaking, it's picking up the cues and learning and reprogramming along the way. So what you say and what you imagine is critical for you to transform in Jesus's process. And I love also that you mentioned, Jeff, that, gosh, my description of what I said, and specifically getting out of addiction, sexual addiction, that took 3 years. That was not easy. And what's really fascinating is that the enemy was beating me up the
Hmm.
whole entire time. Whenever you take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back, the enemy is right there, after getting you to stumble, to say, see, you're an idiot. You'll never change. And I think so many of our listeners, in my experience, will join the enemy in that and beating themselves up, rather than seeing the Father going, oh my gosh, you advanced 2 step. That's amazing. Our Father in heaven is so quick to celebrate the baby steps, and we need to be alongside him in that celebration in order for us to continue to move forward and to have the longevity to move through sin issues that take lots of reprogramming of our brains.
It does, and that whole shame and guilt game is things that are going to slow us down or keep us from being who we really are. And at the end of the day, living in the forgiveness, as well as being aware of the traps that we've got, having the guard at the gates so that we take captive every thought and make sure it's obedient to Christ.
Go
That's a
on.
process of ongoing filtering and saying, okay, is what I'm allowing to go through this mind right now, is it serving me? Is it going to ultimately be a health food of my body, and that I'll benefit from it?
So it's so good. And then connecting that back to your kind of original question is like, who am I? And to our listeners, who are they? At some point, and this was a big deal for me, we've got to find out that answer from our Heavenly Father. We look for cues, clues, and as men in particular, I think we look to who's saying what. Important people in our lives are saying, what are they saying about us? We're really paying attention to those things. But when the Father says who you are, that is laced with love and power, grace that transforms our thinking. So I remember a pretty crazy moment in life when I was going through this transformation, and our family was our Christian family was having this vacation at a lake house, and everyone was being hyper spiritual. It was completely obnoxious, and and like, who could have the best Bible study and who could have the best
Uh,
this or that. And I was just feeling like I was not, my compass was completely lost. That can happen. I'm sure a lot of our listeners after the Christmas break are like, yeah, I could totally relate to Rob. But I went into a moment of just talking to the Father about it. And that's when I received my new name. I can't pronounce it, but the meaning of it is, your worth is found in God. And just journaling on that won't mean much to many other people, but for me, and value and worth, hearing that word, your worth is found in me, as the Father's talking to me, and found in God, that flipped a switch and has been something that I'm continually chasing and seeing and as a foundation for who I am. That if I'm not focused on the things of God and actually imparting those things, that somehow it's missing the substance of who I am. it helps me aim what I do and how I do it.
Okay, Rob, I want to get to the payoff here and the promise of our episode here today, which is to help to talk through a process of who am I and how do we get to that answer and why is that so important? And you agreed, thankfully, in the run up to this episode, is to say that I could just ask you some questions that we didn't pre-plan and to go through the process like we were unpacking this very important point. And the reason that this point, for those that are listening, need to understand is that if I don't have the answer to who am I or why am I here or what was I made for, what's my life's purpose and mission, then I again will fall trap to what the world or others around me want me to be. I'll allow perhaps the enemy, as Rob's been wonderfully explaining, divert some of those thoughts to places that are not true. And then I'll also could be letting my flesh drive me instead of really understanding what I was designed to be. So that answer provides focus for me to know what I should say yes to. What should I say yes to in my career and my family and ultimately in the calling and kingdom life that God's got for me. So that's what we're going to go after here. So Rob, I want to ask you some questions to pull apart the answer to who is Rob Dayton. And here in the beginning, the first question I want to jump out with is, Rob, what do you roll out of the bed and do with excellence? So much so that you don't know how or why, you're just capable to do it. You jump up and without a lot of prep, you're able to deliver it. Rob, what do you find is the thing that is the skill and capability that you've got that you just do, and it's something that was a talent and a gift?
Yeah, I think for me, looking at strengths and someone who's pursued strengths and actually gotten certified in strengths, the Gallup Strength Finder, for me, the first thing I think about is my top two strengths, which is futuristic activator and communication would be third, positivity strategic. I have a unique gifting to see into the future, particularly in other people. Yes, it can be in a city, which is I've got a career in planning, but looking into the future in something and then pulling out the thing that needs to switch, the thing that needs to be activated in order for you to get to that future that you're desiring, and then communication to find and strategy to find the words and strategy, positivity to get in a very encouraging way for you to get to that place. So capturing people's futures, finding the activation point, communicating, finding the strategy, and positive encouragement to get you to that place.
Okay. So, Rob, I see that in you all day long, completely. Um, Tell me some of the activities that you do that get that in gear the most.
I think this is the hardest part because on our strengths we do naturally, we tend to want to work on the things we don't do naturally, which is for our listeners, that's a huge thing you do not want to do. You cannot improve at things you suck at very much, and it takes lots of effort. So
Right.
the trick is like, how do I work on futuristic? How do I work on activator? How do I work on communication? Well, I could tell you training on those things and then focusing on the activities where I get to do those things again and again and again and again is how I grow. It's how my clients grow. So one simple thing on training, I didn't think of going to communications training, but I went to one thinking, okay, well, I'm good at this, but let's try. And they said this thing, well, if you look at somebody for 5 seconds and just talk to them in an audience, like they're the only person. And then when their head moves, move to the next person. And then we tried it out in the room and I just did it. And everyone's like, how did you do that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just doing it. So that's the thing is that if you focus on those activities that you're good at and find training that will also get you engaged in those things, you will have extreme acceleration and talent and mastery in who you are.
Rob, I'm discovering as we're talking about this, about what your capabilities are. And for those who are listening, these are the questions that you can reflect on your own or reflect in a pair or a group coaching or with an executive coach. And the beginning of this is to say is what is my unique capability? What's my potential? the thing that I can just do at a high level very quickly. Rob, with you being futuristic and an activator, just to wrap this up and your strengths, and you've used Strength Finder to discover it, how do you stay or activate or use your futuristic capability? Do you proactively do that, or is it sort of happen to you at the request of a task? How do you use your futuristic strength?
Well, the answer is yes. To all that, you get asked because you're good at it. And then people say, oh, I like that you did that. But it's really going to be your responsibility to aim yourself. No one's going to be driving that. You've got to do that. You've got to identify what you're good at. And then you've got to think about all the activities you do. We call it an 80/20 audit, which means that you're just going through all the activities you do in a week and you're writing them down and you're saying, do I suck at this one? Do I feel weak? Do I feel strong? Do I feel like I'm a master at that? Did I lose track of time and absolutely phenomenally enjoy it? And you're just rating your activities. And the ones that rate low, you get rid of those or you delegate those. And the ones that rate high, you try to replicate those things. So in my life, particularly in coaching, in doing the master's program, in imparting wisdom and encouragement and developing transformation. Those are the activities that I have intentionally over time continued to make sure that that's what I'm doing and I'm not doing the things that are loathsome or that I suck at.
Great. Hey, let's go to the second area here. And this is about what you care about. Rob, what are the things that make you angry, that make you emotional, and that you care so much about them, you're willing to suffer? What are those things that you care a lot about?
Yeah, so two things in general, and they've been signatures for me, is one, I believe that if a city has leadership that is highly engaged and practices excellent and on a cohesive team, that the residents will feel the impact of that and it will be a better future for that city. Number one. Number two is I have a strong desire to transform my mindset to eternity and live in eternity and then have people who say they are Jesus followers look at that and prepare for that in a way where that will be excellent. So they're kind of the same exact lane. They're both futuristic. It's like, here's the future of a city, here's the future of a person. How do I engage with that person so they could be strategic so that that future is the best possible outcome for them? That's what I care about most.
Is it fair to call that community building, something along those lines?
Yeah, it can be, particularly with city teams, executive teams, getting them to really appreciate each other and the separate talents they bring. It's a little different for the individual because it's not necessarily a team. There's usually a spouse, and that's going to be really critical to their success is their relationship with their spouse and how they father or mother. But it's really going to be this conversation with the father and Jesus and Holy Spirit about who they are, who He's created them to be, and then how do they have the opportunity to access that? Just like we're talking in this conversation, this is what we do, Jeff, is we try to get people lit in who they are so that they can not only honor the creative spirit that God's placed in them, but also get the highest return on investment that Jesus is expecting from them.
So two questions so far. A third question coming, but really, if you're working on this on your own, the first question to ask yourself is, what am I best at? What am I excellent at? Second question to ask yourself is, what do I care about so much I'm willing to suffer for it? Third question is, why do I exist? And by that question, Rob, why do you exist? What would the world be missing if Rob Dayton wasn't in it?
Yeah, and it's taken a long time to answer that question. And I'll also say that you land on an answer, but then it shifts and refines and gets
Yes.
better and better.
Yes.
So for me, I'm really about helping a person find and live their kingdom calling. For a city, it's helping a team find and live their purpose and service to that city. So they're both kind of the same lane, but that's why I exist. And what I think what was really helpful for me, at least this year, in continuing to refine, is I decided to really think deeply about my values. I'm constantly coaching people, and it seems very intuitive for me to find their values in the way they're speaking. And I kind of aimed that at myself. It was kind of a difficult process, but what I came to is the three things I mentioned is that I need to impart wisdom, I need to see transformation in a life, and I need to bring encouragement to get there. Those three things. And I feel like that is so attached to my purpose and helps me aim my purpose by constantly saying, am I doing those three things? The remarkable thing is that I can do that in line at the grocery store. I can do that. I can do that same thing with my kids. I can do
Right.
that same thing with my spouse. I can do that with my clients. I can do that all the time. I'm beginning to exercise those three things, and that has become my purpose. So, squarely attached to also my talents in terms of futuristic activator.
And see, Rob, you come alive when you get to do those things, right? And so
Come
when
on.
you, yeah, you're getting to do those things, then you're doing the thing that you were made for, the thing you were made to do. And I love that you pointed out, and I want to reiterate this, is that you can't search for perfection in the answer of why do I exist? The first answer will be the first take, and it will last
Yes.
probably as long as a loaf of bread out on the counter. I don't know, a week, a month, who knows, not super long. And in the process, as you stay a student of yourself, you continue to refine it and improve it. And you'll have experiences. And those experiences are going to help to refine the answer so that you'll discover more about yourself as you'll have some real lab experiment of how did I react in that situation? Did my heart come alive? Did the best of me get used? Did I have a sense of this is why I'm here at this moment
Come
in
on.
time? And the more that we get to answer that and be at the center, the more that we're able to live on purpose with it, with a focus. And that's what it's all about when it comes to leveraging our success, right? Is that our success has provided a certain amount of access, capability, opportunity. And by that, we're living in a world where we have to understand to whom much has been given, much is expected.
Come
And if
on.
I live in that world with which I say, okay, hey, I've got a lot here, then to start to live on purpose is our goal, is to make sure that we don't squander all of this, just making sure that we are taken care of, but that we're living with a focused purpose and an
Mm.
outcome that will take that success and leverage it for influence, and to influence in a way with which that significant life will matter
Mhm.
forever.
Yeah, that is so good, Jeff. And I think the challenge for the people listening, for our clients, is that it can be such a great day to discover your strengths, discover your purpose, discover your values, the things we're talking about, what matters most. That can be a good day. And that can eclipse the reality that now that needs to be worked out in action. So many times I'll do like a strengths workshop and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, it's so amazing." But then come back 6 months later, who's worked that out and focused on that? And our work with God and working in relationship with him and having him understand who we are and getting that on the table it's a journey. That's why I think we're called followers of Jesus, because he's
Yeah.
going somewhere. He's taking us on a journey. And the Easter egg hunt is the biggest thing. It's like I don't know about your kids, but like eventually you needed to hide the eggs a little better
Yeah.
because they get
The good
bored.
ones.
Yeah, and and as we've gotten older, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter. It's the glory of kings to find it out. And so God has made these things even more exciting, and we have to continue to pursue this journey and know that there's even more out there for us as we refine who we are and actually put this into practice.
With our podcast and every episode, our aim is to provide to that promise that you'll work less and make more. And the point of the matter isn't because we're looking for a hedonism or an ability to not do anything, but rather to say that I don't want to be so entangled in the affairs of my career that I lose the capability to do things that are truly significant. I want all of this ecosystem of my life to be simpler while I see my income streams grow. And while those income streams grow because I'm leveraging the best of me, then I'm creating opportunity to have headroom to say yes to significant things, to conceive, collaborate, and build a significant life. Every time that we're together, that's what we're about. Today's episode has all been about answering the question, who am I? And to get to those, again, summarizing these three questions. Number one, it's what do you do with excellence better than most? What's the capability that you've got? The second question is, what do you care so much about that you're willing to suffer for it? And then third is to say, why do you exist? What would the world be missing if you weren't here? Answering those three questions and finding where all three of those intersect creates an answer with which you can answer, who am I? All right. I hope you've enjoyed this episode that we've given to you. Until next time, God bless you.